I guess I'll admit people as they come. I know it's just after Labor Day, so might not be the best week for people. Welcome back, Kelly. Looks like you're in a hotel room.
I am in Greenwood, Mississippi tonight.
Okay. As you guys know, Kelly did, I have volume 1 right here. And I know they had them on sale for those who went to the convention, both volumes. So he's going to talk to us about putting them both together. Obviously, you guys were at the convention. You know, Boog Powell is one of the featured speakers, and he's featured in volume 1. We're being recorded. Just to let you guys know, for those who come to our Sunday night talk, which we do the last Sunday of the month, we're going to have a presentation. Sam Zigner is going to do a presentation this Sunday. He was somebody who was supposed to do a presentation at SABR 50 and came down with COVID, and couldn't make the trip from South Florida. So he will, there'll be more on that in the emails and stuff like that when I send out in the near future. And for anybody who would like to write an article for the newsletter, you got to get it in. You got a couple weeks. You got until September 30th. So I'll let Kelly take it over. I will be here, mute and go on silent. And if you need anything, let me know.
All right. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, let me give you the access. Hang on. And I will give you, I'll make you a co-host. There you go. Yep, go right ahead.
Okay, hopefully I can get to it here. Oh, let's see. Here we go. Is that coming through?
Yep, we got it. Looks great.
Okay, fantastic. So, as Peter alluded to a little earlier, this winter, I met with your group. The morning that I was to meet with the group, I lost my voice. So it was a rather challenging time that I spent with everyone. So hopefully I sound a little bit better today. And we can just kind of go through both volumes. I only had volume 1 out when I spoke the first time. Volume 2 is finally out. It was out in April, and we'll just kind of go through every player that I interviewed and some of my experiences with each one of those players. So as you can see on this screen here is volume 1 and volume 2. I am in 2 of the 5 pictures. I will let you guess which 2 pictures. I'm sure it's not going to take too much sleuthing to figure that out. But volume 1 on the left, that is my 1972, I believe, Little League team, the Reds. And volume 2, which is on the picture on the top, that's 2 years later. So you can see a little maturity there in some of the players. But as I mentioned before, how I got into this project is that I was reading books about all of the old baseball players, the biographies. And then I come across Glory of Their Times, thought it was the best book I'd ever read, as with most baseball fans that are also avid readers. And I thought, I want to find another book like this. And I just searched and searched, and I couldn't. So in the course of my searches, I come across this reviewer that wrote, "This book is so well written, I felt like I was on the field with the other players." Well, my first thought was not that. My first thought was, I never had the ability to be on the field with those pro players. But you know what? I've got a lot of great memories of growing up playing baseball. And I wonder what the pros' memories are. So I just started looking for the book, searched for the book, and couldn't find it. And as you can tell, I'm in a hotel room right now. I'm on the road quite a bit. and I have way too much time to think. So this idea came into my head. If there's not a book out there about the pro players' memories of youth baseball, why don't I do it? You know, I was looking for a new project, a new challenge, but I was clueless. Had the idea, I was clueless. I didn't have any connections in baseball, didn't have any connections in the literary world. So I was just going to look at it as a work project. I was just going to work it out. And you'll see that in the course of our conversations here tonight, I believe that's what ultimately got me to the end. That's what got me to the publisher and getting it published. But I do have some regrets in taking that approach as it being a work project. So my first interview that I did was with Jim Hickman. Jim Hickman started out with the New York Mets. And again, as I said, I have no connections to anyone in Major League Baseball. But in my travels, I always passed by this little town in Western Tennessee. It was called Henning, Tennessee. And up on the water tower, it said, home to Jim Hickman and Alex Haley. Well, I didn't give it much thought. But one day when I was at one of my clients, the owner pointed at this guy and he said, hey, you know who Jim Hickman is? I said, I sure do. And I proceeded to talk to him, just say, yeah, I played with the Cubs, etc. And he said, well, that's his son right there. That was my opening. That was my first opening to get an interview. And this was in 2010. So got the interview set up, sat down with Mr. Hickman, and had just the most unbelievable time speaking with him. He was a very soft-spoken man, but he didn't give himself as much credit as being a professional player as I think he should have. But he had some funny stories to tell me. They called him Silent Jim for several reasons. One was because he ran into some problems with the New York press, and he just refused to talk to anybody. A couple of the stories that he told me, one, all of his friends were chewing tobacco, so he thought that he would chew tobacco this one night, and in the course of him chewing the tobacco, not really understanding the process of spitting the tobacco juice out, he was out in center field and pretty well passed out and had to be carried off the field. So he was a super guy. As far as his major league career, he was originally drafted, or not drafted, but signed by the St. Louis Cardinals. And then the Mets took him in the expansion draft. He was the first Met to hit for the cycle. He also, that cycle was the natural cycle. So he hit a single, double, triple, and home run. First to do that. He was the last person to hit a home run in the Polo Grounds before it was closed and the Mets moved to Shea Stadium. And once he got to Shea, he was the first batter to be hit by a pitch in Shea Stadium. But super guy, super nice guy, told a lot of great stories. He told me a lot of stories that I had to turn the recorder off. He thought, this are stories that is best to be left between me and Kelly. So I will respect him in those wishes. Next player that I interviewed was Phil Ruth. Again, no connections with anyone, but a good friend of mine is an attorney. And I thought, if I have an attorney attest that this is a legitimate project, I'm not just a fanboy trying to meet some baseball players. And so I was explaining to, his name is Tom, I was explaining to Tom what I was wanting him to do. And I said, I had written a letter to Phil Ruth and got a letter back from him, a nice letter, but basically he was saying thanks, but no thanks. He said, Kelly, you know what? He said, I've never told you this, but Phil Ruth is my brother-in-law's father-in-law. Like, really? I said, would you speak to him about me? He said, sure, I will. So Tom set up an interview with Phil. Phil had some great stories about growing up in Western Kentucky. He's from Paducah, Kentucky. And he, in his high school team, they traveled to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, which is about an hour drive. By the time they got there, they had endured a couple of flat tires. Pretty much the entire team was in the back of a pickup truck. And this is in the 50s. So, you know, they didn't travel by bus. They traveled by whatever means possible. And they was in an old farm pickup truck, had a couple of blowouts. By the time they got to the game, I didn't have a whole lot of time to warm up, but the fans in the grandstands, he said the only thing Phil could remember that game was that they spent the whole day betting on whether or not he could throw out runners at second base. And he said that was the craziest thing he had ever experienced. Hawk Taylor was a bonus baby. He is from Metropolis, Illinois, which is right across the river from Paducah, Kentucky. Hawk was an all-around athlete. His nickname, Hawk, came to him because he was such a fan of a movie serial called Hawk of the Wilderness. It was kind of like a Tarzan serial, but he loved it so much that he just became Hawk Taylor. He loved to play baseball. He had two uncles that played in the minor leagues, one in the Yankee organization. He didn't have a lot of money, so when the local grocery store had a raffle to give away a catcher's equipment, he bought as many raffles as he could save, or buy as many raffles as he could save, and he ultimately won. He told me when I interviewed him that he feels like more than likely the community knew he wanted that equipment so badly that they just gave it to him. But again, Hawk was an all-around athlete, but a superior baseball player, superior hitter. He became a bonus baby in 1957. He signed for, I've read and heard everything between 109,000 and 119,000. And when I asked about the 119, he didn't dispute it. He didn't confirm it, but he didn't dispute it. Hawk, he was stuck on the Milwaukee Braves roster for 2 years, and he never fulfilled his whole potential because he didn't get to mature. He was 18, 19 years old those 2 years. Maybe got, I don't know, maybe 8 at bats in, and he just never really blossomed into the hitter that he could have been. He spent 11 years in the major leagues, but I asked him, I said, Hawk, would you give up that $119,000 signing bonus to go straight to the minor leagues and possibly develop your skills to where you'd have a longer major league career? And that wasn't a question that he wanted to answer. He just kind of said, I can't answer that question. But I asked him about his time growing up playing baseball. He said, Kelly, it was nothing but great memories. Great memories is what I have. So Phil, I sent all the players a copy of both volumes. And after I sent it to Phil, he sent me a couple of pictures back in a nice note. So I just wanted to include this picture of Phil Ruth. I've had the pleasure of having lunch and breakfast with Phil a few more times, and just a great person and a great storyteller. So here's me and Boog Powell. This whole time that I was working on setting up interviews or getting interviews with Jim Hickman, Phil Ruth, and Hawk Taylor, behind the scenes, I was working on getting an interview with Boog. Both my sons were in high school at the time, and they were in an organization called the Technology Students Association. And it was in Baltimore, and I knew that they were going to give tickets to the Baltimore Orioles game. So in the back of my mind, knowing that Boog sits out in front of his barbecue stand, because that's where this picture's from, me and a buddy did a tour of New York and Boston and Hall of Fame and ended up in Baltimore. Knowing that Boog sat out there, I was going to pitch this idea to him. So the night of the game, I'm walking up to ask Boog, and my wife, she scatters, my sons, they scatter, they don't want to be around when they tell me to get lost. But as I'm walking up and Boog is looking for something to sign, I just asked him, I said, hey, I've got this book project. I give him the 15-second elevator pitch. He said, sure. He said, call the Baltimore Orioles offices, tell them know that I've okayed it, let them know I've okayed it, and we'll get it set up. So with Boog, there were some logistics to figure out. I found out that I was going to have the opportunity to interview Boog at roughly 4 p.m. and I can't remember what day it was. Let's say it was a Tuesday. That's when I was told I could interview Boog, but the interview was going to have to be the next day at 4 p.m. and in the Baltimore offices. So I live 12 to 14 hours from Baltimore. Didn't have time to get a plane ticket. So I quickly got about 3 or 4 hours shut eye, got in my car and drove to Baltimore through the night. Got there about 1 o'clock. I got checked into the hotel, got everything ready, and walked over to the offices and interviewed Boog. Had a great conversation with Boog. He told me all about his time in the Little League World Series and just some of the joys that he had growing up with his brothers. He had one brother, and then he had a half brother or a step brother named Carl Taylor, and Carl ended up playing in the majors as well. Carl was a catcher, and by coincidence, his nickname was Hawk also. So when I told Boog that I'd interviewed Hawk Taylor, he looked at me like, I don't think so. I said, it's not that, it's not your Hawk. Yeah, he was just a joy to talk to. And then afterwards, when they came and said, hey, it's time for you to go out to your barbecue stand, he said, come on, Kelly, come with me. So I had the opportunity to stand down there with Boog and still chat with him for another 30, 40 minutes while he was signing autographs. Just such a super person. This gentleman here, Charlie Lloyd, if you go on Baseball Reference, you will not find anything if you search his name. He played in the minors with the New York Yankees organization from 61 to 65. He's from Paducah, Kentucky as well. And he pitched to two pro catchers, Phil Ruth and Hawk Taylor. And both Hawk and Phil said Charlie was a major league pitcher. He was just in that Yankee organization, and they had a strong starting five. They just held on to him in case they needed him. He was basically the reliever in case somebody got injured. Unfortunately, no one ever got injured. Charlie played on a junior college team, and that junior college team that they were on beat a lot of Division I teams. They went undefeated and went out to, it wasn't Omaha, it was somewhere out west, maybe somewhere in New Mexico. And then they got beat in the finals for the junior college tournament. Again, they drove by car out there. And whereas a lot of these other teams, these junior college teams that had 10, 15,000 enrollment, whereas the Paducah Community College had barely 1,000, they held their own pretty well. But Charlie was a storyteller. You know, he is one of the stories he told me growing up where he did in Paducah. And if any of you, I don't know if in 1937, if where you are based, if you had the Great Flood of 37 is what they call it in the Ohio Valley. And so they built flood wall around the city after that. And when Charlie and his friends would play pickup games of baseball, they'd use the flood wall as a home run, as the fence. And if anybody ever hit a home run, somebody had to jump in the Ohio River and pull the ball out, because they didn't have a whole bag of baseballs to play with. But Charlie was a great guy, and I've had lunch with him and dinner with him a couple of times. Just a fantastic storyteller. This is Willie Blair. Willie Blair's from Kentucky as well, from Eastern Kentucky. He had his greatest success with the Detroit Tigers, and he was also drafted in the expansion draft for both the Colorado Rockies and the Arizona Diamondbacks. So he had the privilege of seeing two expansion teams start in their first year, and you know, just a good guy. This was probably the easiest interview that I was able to get. A coworker of mine, I work in the insurance industry, and a coworker of mine is a insurance agent, and Willie happened to be his client. And he told me, he said, "Hey, I'll set you up an interview." So I just went over to the office and sat down with Willie and had a great conversation. About the time that I finished up Willie Blair's interview, my father passed away. So I took a moment because of that, but also just to reflect on how the project was going and if it was going and continuing on the same path. And what I realized right during my dad's funeral, my dad was a World War II vet, and had so many people come up to me and say, you know, your dad saw a lot, and there's a lot of stories that we lost in his passing. So it got me to thinking, you know, that there's more to baseball. There's more to baseball stories than just major league players. So I wanted to make an effort to interview players from the Negro Leagues and from the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. So the first player I interviewed was a gentleman named Jim Zapp. Jim Zapp was from Nashville, grew up in Nashville. He told me a lot of good stories. He was in World War II as well, stationed in Hawaii. And he played on a lot of those baseball teams, both segregated and integrated teams there in Hawaii, around Oahu, Pearl Harbor. And his nickname growing up was Toots. And he got that nickname, I think, because he had a little problem with tooting as he's growing up, and his big brother gave him that nickname. So when he was playing at Sulphurdale Park in the Negro Leagues, he knew people from his neighborhood was around when they was screaming "Go Toots" as he was at bat. So as I mentioned, I think starting on this project as a work project and staying focused on that, it helped me get to the end, and it helped me to get this work published. But what it also did was that it took the thought out of my mind to get pictures with every player that I interviewed personally. This picture here, I was blessed that Jim Zapp's grandson was at his house when I was there. And his grandson said, "Hey, would you like to have a picture?" And I was like, "Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up." Because again, I was laser focused in getting the stories, not so much the other aspects of what I could personally get out of this project. So I'm very happy. I really like this picture here with Jim. Jim, along with this gentleman here, this is Bill Greason. Jim Zapp and Bill Greason, at the time of my interviews, were the last two surviving teammates of Willie Mays when he played with the Birmingham Black Barons. And Bill Greason, when he finished his playing career, he went into the ministry, and he was a preacher at a Baptist church in Birmingham, Alabama for, gosh, I don't know, 40, 50 years. He just had his 98th birthday last week. I met him at his church, and oh gosh, it was such a pleasure to talk to him and listen to his stories. Some of the stories he told me were not easy stories. He grew up across the street from Martin Luther King, but his family didn't have much money. He said he grew up in the alleyways, basically. Had to attend or go to a segregated park to play. There was only one park that, as he said, his people could go to. His first organized Little League team, or not Little League, but youth team he was on, was sponsored by a funeral home. And he said inevitably when they would meet at the funeral home to go to a game, him and his friends would start snooping around, and that funeral director would always catch them in a room and turn the lights out on them and just scare the dickens out of them. But he was the first African-American player that starting pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals. He had a brief career with the Cardinals, but his stories growing up and his stories that he had to endure as a Marine, he was on Iwo Jima, and he took a lot out of those experiences when he came back to the States. And here's a picture of Bill when he was honored at St. Louis Cardinal game. This is probably about 10 years ago. This picture here, I wanted to show this picture because it shows both Bill and Jim. If you're looking, it's my left to right. Gaylord Perry and this is at Willie Mays' 80th birthday party. So we have Gaylord Perry, then we have Orlando Cepeda, Willie McCovey. That's Jim Zapp, Bill Greason, and then Willie Mays. So when I showed this picture to Bill, he just started laughing. He said, "Let me tell you something about this. See Jim and how unhappy he looks?" It's like, yeah. He said, "Well, it was cold there that night at the ballpark, and Jim complained and complained and complained about how cold he was until somebody ran and got him a blanket and put this blanket over him. And he said he never actually lightened up. He said he was sullen the whole time." But Jim was showing me he had one of those big long Cadillacs on his carport when I went to visit him, and he told me that Willie Mays had given him that car when they came out for this 80th birthday party. So really a great time with the both of them. So this is Irma Bergman. Irma is from St. Louis. Her mom wanted her to be a piano player. And she told her mom, she said, "Mom, I don't want to be a piano player. I want to be outside playing with my friends." And she credits her mom allowing her to go out to play with her friends for her probably 20-year career in baseball. She played with All-Americans, and she also spent some time in the Chicago Women's League as well. When she retired from baseball, and Irma pitched a no-hitter. She had she went 5 for 5 in a couple of games, just an all-around athlete. She joined the St. Louis Police Force, and she became the first commissioned policewoman in St. Louis. She shot as a marksman, just a super fantastic lady. And this is Audrey Kissel-Lafser. Audrey played one year in the All-Americans, and then she played 1 year in the Chicago Women's League. She shortened her career because her husband came back from World War II. But Audrey was a speedster. She liked to steal bases, and she loved to play baseball. And she credited her brothers for teaching her the game of baseball. And again, here's Irma. This was probably about a year before she passed. Irma lived to about 90, 91, I believe. And this is me with Audrey. So Lois Youngin. Lois was from Ohio. She graduated from Kent State University after her playing career. How she got into the All-American League, she went to visit one of her cousins. I believe it was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And she went to a game with her cousins, and her cousins knew she liked to play softball. And the cousin said, "You think you could play out there with them?" And she said, "Do you think, or do I think? I know I can." The next day, they had a tryout set up for her. Apparently, her cousin knew somebody with the team. So she tried out for them, went back home, finished her senior year of high school, got a letter about February of her senior year, inviting her to spring training. So she went to the school principal, and the principal agreed that she could go to spring training if she did her homework while she was gone and came back for graduation. So Audrey went and spent 2 weeks at spring training with the All-Americans, came back, graduated, and then she went straight to the All-Americans. Audrey, I will say this as well. Audrey went on to get her doctorate from the University of Oregon. No, I'm sorry, the University, Ohio State University. Then she went to University of Oregon and was a phys ed teacher, and she is now an emeritus professor at the University of Oregon. This is her friend Katie Horseman, and Lois she set me up with Katie. Katie was a power hitter. Growing up, she played baseball, basketball with her brothers, just loved sports. Her father passed away when she was about 12 years old, and she was very close with her father. And she said every night she would pray, Lord, just find me a place to play baseball. She lived in Ohio, but she had no idea. She grew up in the country, didn't have a lot of money, and she had no idea that the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League existed. And one of her high school softball games, a scout was there, and a scout approached her and asked her if she'd be interested in playing. And she said she was going to go regardless of what her mom said. And she played, I think she played 3 or 4 years in the All-Americans. What's amazing with these ladies that played in the All-Americans is what they accomplished afterwards. She became a nun and became the first nun to receive a bachelor's degree. She left the nun, and I'm not versed in if that would be called the nunnery or what, but she became a track and field coach at the high school level, ended up winning 8 state championships, coaching 8 state championships in track and field. She also had 2 cross country state championships, and she's a member of 5 different Hall of Fames. Just an extremely accomplished lady. This is Lois, and this is Audrey. After they grew up a little bit, just 2 super nice ladies. So Jack Percotti. Jack played baseball at my alma mater at Murray State University. Little story about my interview with Jack. What a lot of people don't realize, these older players still have landlines, and they don't have unlisted numbers. And many of my interviews I set up because I got on the internet, got on whitepages.com and found their landline number. So I called Jack and left a message for him. And this is just to give you an idea of I'm not telling you near the stories that happened to me going through this, but I left a message with Jack between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Told him the project and asked him if he would be interested, if he could give me a call. So it's my responsibility as Christmas rolls around to deep fry turkeys for the family. So I've got 3, 4, 5 turkeys I've got to deep fry. And I'm getting these spam calls left and right. And I'm trying to deep fry turkeys, and I'm trying to answer my cell phone. I've got grease everywhere all over me. And finally I get a phone call, and I pick it up and I said, look, I kind of screamed into the phone. It wasn't very pleasant. And the voice on the other end said, Kelly, I'm sorry. I said, this is Jack Percotti. I'm sorry if I'm disturbing you. And I quickly went into the sorry mode, and I apologized profusely to Jack. And Jack was so gracious. He's from Joliet, Illinois, lives in Chicago now. So I drove up to Chicago, and he greeted me with fresh fruit, vegetables, and dip, and we had a nice conversation. Jack was actually a pitcher And he's not the only person that told me this. He threw out his arm playing youth league baseball. They just pitched him and pitched him and pitched him until his arm went dead. And he said he never really got the strength back in his arm that he would like. As a matter of fact, that's what Boog Powell told me. You'll read in volume 1, Boog Powell talks about his arm. He pitched so much leading up to the Little League World Series that his arm just went dead on him. But yeah, Jack had a lot of great stories about Joliet, Illinois. Many players, many athletes, professional athletes come out of Joliet. But what Jack told me was that the most fun that he and his friends had was not during the games, it was after the games, because all the parents would go to the local pubs and leave the kids at the park to play. And he said we'd have a blast playing there. The day that I left Jack's, he lived maybe 3 or 4 blocks from Wrigley Field, and this was what I drove up to as I was leaving his house. Drove up to the stoplight, pulled up, there's Wrigley Field in front of me, so I had to stop and take a picture before somebody ran over me. And then this is Dale Barra, obviously Yogi's son. I tracked down Dale through the Yogi Berra Museum in New Jersey. And Dale, when I was talking to Dale, he said, hey, look, I'd be more than happy to talk to you. He said, but I'm really busy right now. Do you mind calling me at 8 o'clock in the morning as I'm driving into the city, and we can talk then? I said, sure. So 3 different days over the course of a week and a half, I would call Dale as he was driving into the city, and we'd have a nice conversation. It's interesting to hear him talk about his time growing up, because you had Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, all those great Yankee players over at his house, and they would leave their equipment for him to play with, and he'd play with it and discard it. But the one thing that his dad Yogi stressed to Dale was that I want you playing all sports. He said, I want you playing football because football will make you a better baseball player. I want you to play hockey because it'll make you a better basketball player. His dad really stressed the importance of learning and playing different sports, getting different coaching and learning different skills, and that would make him a better pro athlete, regardless of what sport he ultimately chose. But yeah, Dale was telling me, he said his dad wouldn't go out and pitch with him or his brothers. He would just look at all 3 of his brothers. He was the youngest of 3. And he said, guys, that's what you guys have each other for. Go out and play. So, yeah, Dale had a great childhood, but he did not spend it at the ballpark. He said, I do not remember ever seeing my dad play. I only remember him as a manager. So here's another angle that I took in getting interviews set up. In the course of my research, I realized that a lot of these former players start up baseball academies. And I'm thinking, if they've got baseball academies and they're teaching baseball skills, then they've got to be at the academy. So Kevin Seitzer on the left and Mike McFarland, they had started up a baseball academy in Kansas City. So I got the phone number off the internet, called, asked for Kevin, got him, and pitched my idea. And they said, yeah, come on down. We'd love to talk to you. So my brothers and I, living in Western Kentucky where we live, St. Louis Cardinals is the main team for us. It's 3 hours for us to drive. So my brothers and I went to a ball game on a Sunday, and it was a last minute decision to go. I didn't even grab a hat. It was July and had no sunscreen, and we had excellent seats with no cover. By the time we left that day, I looked like a tomato. And 2 days later, I was scheduled to interview Kevin and Mike. I can only imagine what I looked like to both of them when I walk into the academy, and I looked like a tomato sitting down talking to them. But they were both so accommodating. You know, Kevin liked basketball. Kevin was a basketball player. He loved basketball, and that's what he wanted to be. but he realized that his future was in baseball, and he spent countless hours hitting rocks out of his driveway. And what he would also do is he had a tire swing hanging out of a tree, and he would just spend hours hitting that tire, just hitting that tire for power. And he said he felt like that really helped him immensely, not so much as a home run hitter, but as a hitter, just driving the ball. He told me one day that he realized that, you know what, I'm getting stronger hitting this hanging tire. So I bet if I started hitting a basketball, it would really increase my strength. So he said the first toss of that basketball and swing, and he swung as hard as he could and hit that basketball as hard as he could with that bat. He said that bat ricocheted straight into his forehead and practically knocked him out. And he said he learned a lesson there, that he's going to stick with the swinging tire over the basketball that comes back at him. Kevin grew up in Central Illinois, and Mike grew up just outside of Oakland, and completely different childhood. But his dad was a baseball football coach, and his older brother was a college player, and he ended up being able to play on the local college team as a senior, because he'd advanced along to the point that in his studies, and it wasn't so much his baseball skills, but his studies, that he was able to start taking some college classes. And by doing that, and his brother being on the team, the baseball coach allowed him to essentially try out. He did really well and made the team. So he, technically his senior year of high school, he was playing college ball as a freshman. Lou Piniella. This right here was probably one of my more enjoyable interviews, and also one interview that I just kind of cringe about as well. So I tracked down who Lou's representative was, and I talked to him about my project, and he said, let me talk to Lou and we'll see what he wants to do. So in the course of their conversations, Lou agreed to meet with me, and he said, tell Kelly to meet me at his country club in Tampa. So in the lunchroom. So I met Lou, and we had a super conversation. The stories he told were so interesting, and all the player stories are interesting because they're relating stories from where they grew up. So Mike McFarland, being from the West Coast, he had his stories and how their community looked at youth baseball. Lou, growing up in Tampa with a very diverse community, he had his own stories. So, Lou is telling me about after the adults play their games, the next morning going out searching for pennies and loose change that have fallen on the field. And he tells me about, his Pony League team going to the Pony League World Series, and him out in California with his youth league, climbing a mountain, slipping and twisting his ankle, and him feeling like he lost the championship game because he was horsing around, twisted his ankle. But he grew up with Tony La Russa. So several of his stories were in relation to him and Tony playing together. But as we were winding up our conversation, and I had told Lou, I said, look, lunch is on me. Lunch is on me. We're finishing it up. He said, Kelly, he said, this has been good. He said, there's a lot of players that are in this community here. Fred McGriff, my cousin Dave Magadan, Wade Boggs. Who else did he mention? Danny Tartabull, Gary Sheffield. And when he's rattling off these names, I'm thinking, my gosh, I'm going to be able to close this project out right here. This is going to be fantastic. I mean, I was just, my brain was whirling with what was going on. So I tell Lou I appreciate it, and I can't wait, to get these interviews set up. And if you, Peter, I think you've read the book. As you saw, none of those players are in the book. Okay, and that's a whole other story. But I hit the road. I'm going up I-75, and then I hit I-10. I'm going over to Jacksonville, Florida. I'm going to meet two more Negro League players. I get about 2 hours out of Tampa, and I realize I didn't pay for lunch. I stuck Lou with the bill. When he told me that he was going to set up all these interviews for me, and I got so into my head, I completely forgot to pay the bill. And I hope one day to be able to repay Lou and take him out to a nice dinner. But I met Harold Buster Hare and Arthur Lee Hamilton at Harold's house. They both grew up in the same community in Jacksonville, Florida. Harold went on to get his degree from University of North Carolina, A&M, I believe it was. And he was the captain of the baseball team. Just loved baseball. What he wanted to talk about as much as anything is how he took care of his glove, and how when the season was over, he would clean it up, he would oil it down, he'd put a ball in there, he'd wrap string around it, so he'd have that ready-made pocket at the beginning of next year. And then he, when he got out of college, and he was looking for something to do, and he ended up teaching in the Jacksonville school system, and was a championship basketball coach for years. But he got signed with a Negro League team, and in the course of his travels, he mentions Paducah, Kentucky, which again is just right 20 minutes from where I grew up, and that was quite interesting to hear him bring up a town that I'm quite familiar with. But then Arthur Lee Hamilton, they called him Junior. The Indianapolis Clowns came into Jacksonville, and both their catchers were hurt, and they was needing a catcher. And some of the locals knew about Arthur and said, "Hey, we got this little kid over here. He can play for you." So he came in and played, and they liked that he played so much that they just signed him right then and there. He was 17 years old, and he spent all the way up until the Negro Leagues shut down, playing in the Negro Leagues. He played with 3 ladies also that played in the Negro Leagues. But Arthur, he begged and begged his mom for his glove, and this new special glove, and she got it for him, and he was proud as he could be to get that equipment. And that was really telling with all the players from the 40s and 50s, is that they so much appreciated the equipment. They got anything new, they were happy to get it. And it was he cherished his glove and his bat. So here we go again with baseball academies. Dave LaPointe and Damian Rolls. I met them at their academy in Tampa, and just great storytellers. Dave LaPointe grew up in Glen Falls, New York. Just an unbelievable pitching career in high school. I think he pitched 2 no-hitters in a row, and he was going for a 3rd no-hitter, and somebody got a hit on him and didn't get that 3rd no-hitter. Damon Rose grew up in Kansas City, and he was such a fan of Willie Wilson that when he was growing up, going to daycare, when he'd go to a new daycare, he'd tell them that his name was Willie Wilson. And the first time it happened, his mom could not figure out why these daycare workers kept calling her Mrs. Wilson. And it took her about 2 weeks before she realized that he had told everybody his name was Willie Wilson and not Damon Rose. But great stories there from their academy. Now, I did not promise to buy them lunch, So I didn't have the brain lapse to walk out on a bill for them. But from talking to Dave and Damon, I drove over to New Smyrna Beach, Florida, and talked to Jack Billingham. Pitched on those World Series teams, Big Red Machines back in the 70s. And Jack grew up in Orlando, Florida. Again, a completely different environment from what Dave grew up in and Damon grew up in. They didn't have organized Little League until he was probably 12 or 13 years old. And just loved baseball. But what he also loved was basketball. And he feels like he was pretty adamant that he felt like kids do need to play all sports. That he's got grandkids, and he encourages them to play all sports and not just play one single sport. So Lou Whitaker, Bobby Richardson, and Whitey Herzog. These were 3 phone conversations that I had. I found Lou on the White Pages, called him up. He called me back, and we had a great conversation. Same with Bobby Richardson. Found him in the White Pages. And, Bobby is such a special human being. And, the thing that I really, I guess, took out from his stories he told me was how impactful his youth career was and the adults around him. And that was really an underlying theme with all of the players. And if I could encourage any parent of a young person that plays baseball or softball to read these books, simply read the family and the hometown chapter and see how these professional players, how their parents treated them and how they looked at teaching them the game. But Bobby made a mistake in turning a double play in a championship game when he was 14 years old. And that affected him so much that he carried that mistake with him all the way through his major league career. And just was very impactful to him. Whitey Herzog grew up in a community, strong German descent. And the one comment I recall that Whitey told me was the adults in this community were consumers of beer. and every time I think of that quote, I chuckle. But his thing was with Whitey is what was really interesting. In high school, pretty much the same players played baseball and basketball, and they had a top basketball team and a top baseball team. So their basketball team, his senior year, I think it might have been their junior and senior year. I know their senior year, they lost by like 2 points, and he went like 5 for 10 from the free throw line, and he was like a 90% free throw shooter, and he felt like he cost them the state basketball championship. Same thing in baseball, their high school baseball team. I think it was the baseball team that they may have made it twice to the championship, got beat both times. Well, what gave me such an idea of how impactful these players' youth careers and memories are, that Whitey told me that when he finally won the World Series with the Cardinals, that his memories went back to that state championship, both baseball and basketball. He said he felt like he finally got the monkey off of his back, not for what was going on when he was managing in Kansas City, but his youth career. It was really, really eye-opening to me that he was thinking about his youth career when he won that World Series. So from there, and Peter, I don't know how much time we got. I'm going to try to wrap this up around 7. Doug Flynn played with the Reds. If any stories that I would encourage you to read, Doug's are the stories. Doug had no one interested in him in baseball at all. He went to a Cincinnati Reds tryout camp, just horsing around because his buddies wanted him to go. He went in cut-off jeans and a cut-off sleeve T-shirt just horsing around. They asked him to come back. He came back. Then they asked him to come again. He thought they were joking with him. He thought somebody was playing a joke with him on him. And then he ends up getting signed with the Reds. So, you know, a great example of persevering and growing into your body. He was a small kid when he graduated. He grew into his body as a 18, 19-year-old, and look where it got him. Jim Cott, I can't say anything more about Jim than just such a super guy, and just great stories. If you recall the story I told about Hawk Taylor and the bonus baby, Jim Cott's father was he studied baseball closely. He knew what was going on with the bonus babies, and Jim had an offer to be a bonus baby, and Jim's dad turned it down. He said, no, we're going to take lesser amount, go to the minors, and Jim is going to learn his craft. That's why Jim has a 20+ year major league career. Really great stories, interesting stories. Miami, Florida, 2017. That's me with Tony Oliva, Bert Campaneris, Louis Tiant. My adventures, my 2 days in Miami is the entire introduction of volume 2. It encompasses me getting followed by Major League Baseball security. It encompasses me getting semi-thrown out of the convention center. It encompasses my cell phone going dead. It encompasses a little bit of everything. In the end, these 3 come together at the same time, and they weren't supposed to. And I knew if I let 2 of them go, I was only going to get 1 interview, and that was it. So luckily, I had 3 recording devices, and I set them down with the help of Major League Security, who I finally got on the good side of, and they found a room for me, and I interviewed the 3 of them at the same time. Oh, it was fantastic. I can't explain how much fun that was. Again, the chief of security, Kelly, you want to get a picture with these guys? Yes, I do. So I have so few pictures to cherish these interviews with, and that's my one regret of this whole project. So when I left Miami the next day, I talked to Fergie. That was kind of a story in of itself, because I was supposed to interview him at the All-Star weekend. He didn't make it because of his wife's illness. But after he got the book, he sent me this nice note back. He didn't have to do this. He sat down, wrote the letter out, addressed the envelope, and just talked about how he enjoyed the book. I was so happy to get that. And then Steve Blass, great stories. The one story I'll relate here, he hadn't had a hit all year, and his time to bat was coming up in the game, but he had to go to the bathroom really bad. But he figured, look, I'm going to go up, I'm going to strike out again, I'll go back and go to the bathroom. Lo and behold, he got his first hit in the Little League Baseball. Got a double. When he got to second base, he's all excited, and then he suddenly realized the predicament that he was in, and there was no holding it back. He said the lucky thing was it was those old wool pants, and he said nobody knew what was going on. He said when it first happened, he said there's nothing better than that nice warm feeling. He said, but it didn't take long for that nice warm feeling to turn cold. And he said that's the one memory he'll never forget. Al Oliver and Willie Horton, 2 great hitters. Willie Horton started out in Kentucky, in Eastern Kentucky. His family moved to Detroit. He had a lot of great mentors that he talked about growing up that he really credits his baseball career. Rocky Calavito took him under his wing, not only when he became a major league player, but Rocky caught him hiding out, sneaking into the ballpark when he was a kid. And that's when they first met. So that's a whole story there. Al Oliver, he went to high school with Larry Heisel, and they were baseball stars and basketball stars. Both of them had basketball scholarships, ended up playing in the major leagues. But Al was not short of confidence. He was a confident player in the major leagues. He was also a confident kid growing up. Phil Niekro, I met him at a coffee shop in Flowery Branch, Georgia. He said, Kelly, meet me at Common Grounds Coffee Shop in Flowery Branch at this time. So I got there 15 minutes early. Phil walks in. He introduces himself. Obviously, I know who he is. He said, let's go upstairs. We went upstairs. We spent an hour and a half together. I can't tell you how great he was, because him and Don Sutton, who you'll see next, they treated me as if they didn't have anything else on their calendar that was more important. I mean, they acted like I was somebody, and I truly appreciated that. And same with Don Sutton. I didn't get to personally meet Don. I called him on the phone, and a lot of great stories. Don got into baseball. His first baseball glove was found on the roof. His parents were sharecroppers. So they moved to this farmhouse, and somebody who lived there before had left a baseball glove on top of the roof. And his mom made him a ball out of socks and tape. Phil Negro, he had what he called the tape ball. And that's how he learned how to throw the knuckleball. Fantastic stories about Phil and his brother Joe growing up. He's the best friend with John Havlicek. So Phil has a lot of stories about him and John Havlicek growing up. I was so sad when they both passed, because I really believe they would have enjoyed reading the stories that come from all these other players. So that's it. I apologize. It's 7:01. If you're interested in picking up the book, just like me, thebook.com, there's a link. Use the code Homer, and you can get free shipping. But I appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you guys. It's been fun. Any questions?
Questions, guys?
I'm gonna stop.
Volume 1 was worth my time, so I'm hoping to get somewhere down the line, get volume 2. I have a whole bunch that I picked up at the convention that I got to get through first.
I understand. I've got a lot of books too that the funny thing, when I started this project, I was an avid reader. I started this project. I have not read a book since I started it. I just, this took up a whole lot of time. So I'm hoping to get back reading again.
Yeah.
But listen, these players talked about the stories that I really enjoyed the most, the stories where they talked about pickup games. And when you start reading them, you start realizing different regions of the country have different names they call these games, but they're essentially all the same. And also their recruiting, what they went through in recruiting and being scouted, those were very interesting stories as well.
Excellent. Well, if there's nothing else, guys, it's a little after 8. I think the Orioles are tied right now. Last time I looked.
That's right.
That's right. It's 8 o'clock your time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the first Yankees game of the doubleheader went 12 innings. Of course, Minnesota blew it.
Minnesota can't beat the Yankees.
They just can't. I just read a stat that's in the Bronx since 2015. They are 2-23.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Hey Peter, let me ask you real quick. So was Sunbury Press's table?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, they I haven't been in that many conventions compared to other people there, but this one seemed to, the ones that I remember, seem to have the most tables. Now, obviously there were 1, 2, 3, probably 4 to 5 publishing companies, then a couple of merchandise folks. The Orioles had a table, and the Babe Ruth Museum, and there were a couple nonprofits, but there was a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
So
well, I hated not being able to go up there. The publisher invited me up, and I as a SABR member, I was wanting to come as well. But I've been on the road. It seems like I'm on a rock tour. I haven't been everywhere but home for the past month and a half. So I'm ready to get back home. That's for sure.
I hear you. So, but the convention went pretty well. We got good feedback, and we'll write about it in our next newsletter. So, and next year's is Chicago, for those who didn't know. So,
Oh, good. Well, that's closer to me, so hopefully I can make it.
so which is, I forget if it's end of June or early July, but it's
Yeah, it's early July. It's right after the 4th, I think.
right after the 4th. So,
Yeah.
looking forward to that. I always enjoy Chicago. So, but other than that, for those, we had our event Sunday, Aberdeen game, and that went well. I got good feedback on that. And you know, if the Orioles don't make the postseason, doesn't matter, because next year we're going to even do better. So I'm not worried. We got something good going on here. I assume, Kelly, you're a Reds fan, and I know it's been a long season. No?
Cardinals.
No.
Cardinals.
Oh.
Yeah, no Reds. No.
No Reds.
I'm Cardinals.
Yeah. My National League team is the Cubs, and you know, it's not worth talking about. So.
Well, I will tell you this: when I started following baseball, '69, that was Baltimore Orioles, Minnesota Twins, Pittsburgh Pirates. So outside of the Cardinals, those three teams, you know, I followed them religiously, collected the baseball cards, and yeah, those three teams. I'm happy to see the Orioles coming back, and would love to see the Pirates make a comeback, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, not this season, that's for sure. If they do it the right way, the Orioles did it the right way. You just have to, you know, you got to stay the course and gut everything. But
that's true. Yeah.
And well, Washington has the worst than everybody, because they're not only did they cut their system and get rid of all their stars, it looks like they're for sale. So they're probably not going to put money into a team if they're, you know, it's in flux.
No, it's hopefully what I've heard, the guy that owns the hockey team is looking at it. What's his name?
Oh, Ted Leonsis.
Leonsis, yes.
Yeah.
He's trying to pull some investors together, which I think that would be good. But nobody asked me, so I'm not.
Yeah, the Nationals are for sale, and the Angels are for sale. So
I hope the Angels come back. I don't want to talk to you. I'll shut up, because I'll keep you guys on. You guys got games to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And chores to do around the house. So
I gotta go eat dinner. So
okay. Well,
very good.
Tom and Jeff,
Very good. Yep.
thanks very much. This will obviously be up on Jacob will put it up in the next couple of days for anybody who wants to see it. And then I'll keep you guys posted. And Jeff, I guess I'll see you next at the lunch on the.
I'm not sure if I'll be at that one or not. I'm coming down the 20th, the 22nd, and the 24th.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if I'll make it the 21st or not.
That's okay. But yeah, I'll be there. And then obviously, then it's October, and there we go. The season's coming to an end. So, so anything else? Just you guys know how to reach me. Thank you, Kelly. Hopefully I'll see you in Louisville sometime again down the line.
Hope to.
And my nephew, who you met last year, he's just started his sophomore year at the University of Pittsburgh.
Good for him. Yeah. All is well then. I guess he's going good.
Yeah, he's enjoying it. So
good. It's a good time of the life for them at that age. So
yeah,
needs to enjoy it.
Well, other than that, I'll see you guys again soon, and have a great week, everybody, and enjoy the soon-to-be fall weather.
Yep. Thanks. Nice job, Kelly. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks, Kelly.
All the best.